So, Hunter, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about your new book, 40 Days on Being a Two. How are you
Well,
doing
thank
today?
you. Thank you, Michael. I'm doing great. I'm very honored to be a part of this interview with you and just thank you for your invitation and interest.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a two's a helper, but I'm not gonna get into that. What I would like to do is I'm interviewing everyone in the journal series from IVP. So, some people might be more in tune with Enneagram, some might be newcomers. So I was hoping what you'd do first is just start us off with kind of giving us the general idea of a number two.
Absolutely. Well, when I think about an Enneagram type two, of which I'm a proud member of that group, I think about the wounding message for type two. I think about the wounding message for all the numbers when I'm just giving kind of a brief description of them. And the wounding message, which just somehow attaches to us mysteriously somewhere early in childhood, we just kind of pick up this message from the universe. And it tells twos that you need to be fine and you need to just be all right because everybody else around you has a lot of needs. And so it'd be great if you don't take up too much space with your needs. And it would be even better if you could identify the needs of people around you and meet them. And so twos kind of come into the world just believing that the way that they will find love and belonging, which by the way is what I kind of think we're all on this universe trying to do, but the way that we find love and belonging is through being attentive and helpful and responsive to the needs of people around us, because we believe that if you need me, then maybe you'll want me, and if you want me, then maybe you'll love me. There's this kind of chain that twos do. So we are sometimes described as the helper, and ultimately what's behind that is we just believe that's our pathway to community, to relationship, to love and belonging, is minimizing our own needs and identifying yours and meeting your needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a big task for a number two, and I love twos. It's just that a lot of
Yeah.
times I have a hard time getting to know twos because every time I'm like, okay, I know there are two, focus in, but then they're
Right.
helpful, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I did it again. They did everything I needed, and I wasn't there
Yeah.
for them. Shoot.
Well, and honestly, but that's on us because all that I've said, it sounds so wonderful until you realize that all this helping can either be wonderful and altruistic, or it can be manipulative and controlling. We're equally as capable of expressing all this help in that way. And so much of the time, Michael, we deflect personal questions. We deflect personal revelation. It feels like maybe it's too vulnerable sometimes for us to tell you a whole lot about ourselves or what we need. So I don't think your experience with twos is uncommon, where sometimes twos walk away from interactions or sometimes people walk away from interactions with a two and say, gosh, we didn't get to talk about you much today.
Mhm.
And really that's oftentimes that's the two kind of diverting and deflecting and turning attention back toward the other person.
Right. Each number um, has where they go when they're, I guess maybe worn out or stressed, or some people
Right.
call it their dark place. I'm a four, so I go to a two,
I love
except I
boys.
instantly am in that, well, it's manipulation. I'm going to help you, but I want something.
Right,
So,
right. Yeah. Yeah. When we're stressed, you're right. We go to these other kind of number pathways. Twos go to eight. And I think in a way, the lifetime journey for twos and for all the numbers is figuring out what in the world does it look like to access that stress number in a way that's helpful and not in a way that's manipulative or controlling. When I go to eight, that's when people who usually think, gosh, he's such a nice guy, so easygoing. Whoa, he shocked us by that explosion of anger today. But my lifetime invitation and journey is, well, what if instead of going to eight and getting anger, I could just go to eight and get that beautiful two-letter
mm,
word? No. and just tell someone, no, I can't do that today, or no, I can't help you with that today. And
Right.
maybe that would save me a lot of trouble.
So, in that vein of discussion, maybe that's kind of my next question for you is we've kind of covered a little bit of what a two is. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your journey on how you came about the Enneagram and how
Yeah.
you became to know your number. I know, a lot of people swear by the tests. I had to take the test like, I don't know, 4 times and got 3 different
Yeah.
answers. But
Right.
people eventually get to where they find out what their number is. So maybe you could
Absolutely.
tell us about your journey a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. So the beautiful thing about my journey was it came looking for me rather than me looking for it. I was in Florida at a retreat with some friends, and I was seated at the dinner table next to Suzanne Stabile, who was also there with the same friends at the dinner party. And of course, a lot of your listeners and readers will know Suzanne is a nationally recognized Enneagram author and teacher and speaker. And I'd never heard the word Enneagram, but I was just seated next to her. She's a two, I'm a two. And so naturally, before dinner was served, we were fast friends.
Mhm.
And she told me, when I said, what do you do? She told me she taught the Enneagram. And it just so happened a few weeks later, she was going to be in my hometown of Nashville to teach. And so I snuck in on this kind of private event that she was leading for a church. I snuck in, sat in the back, and listened to her signature day-long Enneagram Know Your Number workshop. And I heard all the 9 types described. And I heard too, as in a way, the most exposing one. The answer usually for which type is ours is the one that kind of hurts the most.
Mhm.
And so it was pretty quick for me to see that type 2 was the one that fit the best for me, and kind of to begin that Enneagram journey. And now I teach the Enneagram, and in fact, I work with Suzanne and her husband Joe at their ministry center in Dallas. So it's been wonderful for life to just kind of come full circle in that way. But there are a lot of access points, as you mentioned, Michael, to discovering your number. And the idea of test is kind of one of the newer ones that's out there. Now there's a proliferation of tests, and some of them are better than others. But what I love about, if people have the option to hear all the 9 types, either described in a workshop or described in a long form book or described in a podcast or audio series, then they have the option of self-identifying which one fits the most. And because the Enneagram is ultimately a tool about dignity and compassion, I like those ways of discovering your number rather than a test telling you what you are, because that removes some of your involvement in the story. And so to anyone who's kind of trying to discover, I'd encourage you, find a book, find a podcast, find an audio series, find a workshop, and listen to all 9 types described in detail. And you'll know which one fits you the most. It's not always overnight. Some people, my friend Ian Cron, who's a great Enneagram author and teacher, it took him a couple of years to sort of go between a couple numbers and really identify which was his. Some people's journey takes a little bit longer. So don't let yourself get discouraged, but it's a beautiful tool if you can do the work and discover your number, and then have the invitation open to you to figure out, how do I now use this knowledge to live in a more healthy way?
And I'll have to agree with you that it's a much nicer way to learn. However way you choose to do it, but to learn about all 9, maybe talk with people that are close to you, whatever, and you get to figure out which one's closest to you. Because I was in a workshop once. It was a couples workshop, and this one lady, she's really sweet. I mean, she was a chatterbox, real emotional. Almost no one else could get a word in. And then she goes, well, I took the test and I'm a 5. And I'm like, that is
Whoa.
not a 5.
Right.
So
Right.
the test is helpful, but it just kind of depends, right?
Right.
So, and a 5, for those that don't know, are very analytical, and you're lucky if you even get them to answer you half the time because they don't
Right.
even understand why you're asking.
Right, they're very private. Yeah, they don't usually love to go on couples retreats, really.
Yeah, I don't know how all that came about, but it was fun. Um, so you've gone through the journey. You know you're a two. Now you obviously work with the Enneagram, but as a two, what's one of the hardest things in your life for you as a two?
Oh man. Well, unfortunately, the list is long, but a couple of things that are just kind of come up as themes more often than not is as a two, I get involved in a lot of things that ultimately are not probably the right things for me to do. And what I mean by that is I'm a responder as a two. I'm a natural born kind of person who sees things that could be better, sees problems, sees things that people are struggling with, wants to help, wants to intervene. And so I often will take on all these tasks or all these projects or all these problems or all these things in response. But what's being undone is my own stuff, my goals, my dreams. So even writing this book, Michael, was a good lesson and journey for me because I had deadlines and I had goals and I needed to write this and I wanted to write this and wanted it to be published. But I had to learn how to really prioritize my own goals, my own dreams, my own wants. And as strange as it may sound to other numbers, that's very threatening to a two. Because if I prioritize my dreams and my goals, and I don't give as much attention to prioritizing your needs or your dreams or your goals, then I have to face the existential question of, will I be left alone? Or will you be there for me one day? Or will you forget about me or not need me or not want me or not love me? So that's one of the things that comes up all the time is figuring out what is mine to do. And that's a question for all twos to ask themselves. What is the mine to do? Is this mine to do? And the other thing that I have to really wrestle with is twos, this has come up today, in fact. It's kind of my little lesson for today. Twos are what we describe as thinking repressed. And what I mean by that is there's this idea that we're all thinking, feeling, and doing our way through life. Thinking, feeling, and doing. But based on our Enneagram number, one of those is dominant, one of those is repressed, and then one of them kind of supports in the middle. And for twos, twos are feeling dominant, which means we feel our way through life. We encounter people, we encounter situations and problems with feeling, and then we react and do based on those feelings. But what I don't often take enough time to do is to think. And so I find myself sometimes in this bad loop of just feeling something and doing, and then feeling something and doing, and feeling something and doing. But I need to bring up analysis and critical thinking and ask myself good questions and really be thoughtful, because all of that feeling and doing can get me into trouble. And even just today, it was getting me into trouble as I had a problem at work that I was feeling about and then taking action on. And when I stopped to process it with a friend, they were able to point out, well, hold on, let's reframe this. Let's think about this in a different way. And that's a trap for us twos, is we've got to learn how to bring thinking into our feeling and doing.
Wonderful. That I don't think I could have asked for a more perfect way to slide into my next question then. Is as you know your number, and in this case it would be a two. Um, how could you explain how you think that helps people in their spiritual walk?
At the end of the day, we all have a personality. And the Enneagram tells us that our personality is revealed by our Enneagram number. That's one way, not the only way, but it's one way of describing our personality. But in the spiritual life, we believe that we're more than just personality. There's something deeper in us, something interconnected within us, whether we want to call it a soul or a true self or more of an essence. There are deeper things than personality. And so what the Enneagram does is it says, okay, let's give let's give some language to personality. Let's examine it. Let's explore it so that we can understand if it is becoming outsized and actually blocking us from the things of truth and the things of the soul and the things of our essence and the things of our core true self, maybe what the apostle Paul would describe as the Christ in you and the Christ in me. And so Enneagram work, rather than elevating personality or making it kind of just a fun cocktail party trick, it actually helps us to manage our personalities. And if we manage our personalities, if I learn how to, ask myself questions about what's mine to do and should I always be rescuing and intervene? And maybe I'm not maybe actually there is a Messiah and I'm not him. As I learn to manage my personality a little bit more, then I have the capacity for some soulish moments to emerge. And the spiritual life is all about those moments. And so the Enneagram has a lifetime of invitations for how it can help us grow, how it can help us be healthy, how it can help us walk into spiritual transformation. But at the core of the core of the core, it helps us to expose the lie that we are our personalities and that's all we are. No, we're something deeper. We've got deeper places in ourselves. I describe the Enneagram sometimes like a house, and I say our personality is like the front porch in the living room. It's the first thing people meet, and it's the part of ourselves that's kind of cleaned up and swept up and ready for visitors. But just like in our houses, there are kitchens and living rooms and dens and family rooms and back porches. Ourselves, we have deeper places in ourselves too. And if we're not careful, our personalities will keep us from accessing those deeper places.
That's a wonderful analogy. I like it. I'm gonna have to steal that one.
Yeah.
So um, so let's get back to your book, 40 Days on Being a Two, and it's a journal. Um, Tell us a little bit about how you think that might help the Christian that decides to pick that up and read it, or anyone for that matter, on
Mhm.
to understand their walk, and especially their walk in Christ.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that question, Michael. My hope and goal is that there are several ways that this book could be helpful to people. First of all, it is written as a 40-day journey, a 40-day devotional. So if you're a two, or even if you're not a two and you just want to walk through it, it can be walked through day by day, and there's a reflection each day around one part of being an Enneagram 2. And then each day is followed by a practice or a prayer or some kind of exercise that you can do just as kind of a way to connect with yourself that day. And some people, I think, are using it that way. Other people are reading it as a way to hear a two in a two's own voice describe that number. And so I think that in a helpful way, I want to get all 9 books and read all 9, because I have not before had the opportunity in a book form to read each number described by that number. And so that's something that I think is exciting about the series too. So whether you're a two or not, 40 Days on Being a Two is an access point into understanding a little bit more in a nuanced, personal way, with my own personal neuroses sprinkled in and my own personal kind of life stories and experiences sprinkled in. But it's a way of just learning what life is like for a two in the voice of a two. And so it can be used as a 40-day journey, or it can be used as a way to just kind of read it all and hear a two in their voice describe their number. And that's some of what I'm doing with the other books. My friend Sean Palmer, who's 40 Days on Being a Three has been released. I loved reading and just understanding a little bit more about what threeness looks like. So I hope readers will find it as an opportunity and an invitation to some transformation. The in the spiritual life, Michael, I think there's change and there's transformation, and change happens when we take on something new, and transformation is what happens when we open our hands and let something old fall away. And my goal in 40 Days on Being a Two is that it's a book about transformation. It's not a let's take the hill and here's the 5 steps to life success and fixing your life as a two. it's a journey where hopefully twos and others can read it and see that that some things maybe that are old need to fall away so that we can spiritually transform into people that are more empathetic, more compassionate, more loving, more just.
Amen to that. Absolutely. Um, thanks again for sharing with us. We're coming up close to the end. Um, do you have any final words you'd like to share with the audience before we close things up?
Well, I'm so honored to be a part of this. I really, my encouragement to the audience is I'm excited about this whole series because each of the authors has a very different life experience and a very different faith journey and a very different background. And through the 9 volumes, you're going to hear each author in their own number, in their own voice, describe what life is like for that number. And I think that's an exciting, engaging way. It's not going to read like a textbook, it's not going to read like an Enneagram primer in some way. So I'm excited about the process. And I guess my final thing to say is just if anybody listening to this is new to the Enneagram and is still exploring it and kicking the tires a little bit, I would just encourage you that this is a tool that has a lifetime of opportunity in it. And I'm an evangelist for the fact that we need some tools. The Enneagram doesn't work for everybody. It's not doesn't resonate with everybody, and that's okay. It's not Jesus and it's not the gospel. It's a tool. And if the Enneagram doesn't fit well for you, find a different tool, but find some tool like the Enneagram to help you learn about yourself in a deeper way so that you can expose some of the parts of yourself that are hard to expose and we like to keep hidden so that we can have more Christ in you, Christ in me moments.
Yeah, I hear you there. I think that's working on being humble. That's the hardest thing in any person's life. It's just where sin
Absolutely.
seems to come from. So that's wonderful advice. Thank you. All right, Hunter. Well, once again, 40 days on being a two, IVP Press. And thanks for sharing with us.
Thank you, Michael. It's been great to be with you.